What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. I'm sure you all saw the news yesterday. Oklahoma, Texas, they're going to be leaving the Big 12 early. They're going to be heading to the SEC in 2024. That means not this next season, but the next season after that, Oklahoma and Texas will be in the SEC. We'll kind of go over all of this. I'm going to show you one of the schedule models that I think they could potentially use here in just a second. But my reaction, on the one hand, I'm a little disappointed because I've been looking at this new Big 12 and going through these teams and looking at the schedules, and it's really exciting. I think that this new Big 12 would have been a lot of fun, especially if Texas and Oklahoma had stayed in that conference. But on the other hand, it's exciting because it's a change. It's something different in the SEC. It means 9 conference games in the SEC, new matchups. Again, I'm a little disappointed that we're not going to get to see this new Big 12 a little bit more, but excited to see what the new SEC is going to look like. Big picture, though, I do wish that Oklahoma and Texas were just going to stay in the Big 12, because if those programs continue to be top-tier programs, the Big 12 is just not going to be anywhere near what they could have been, and it's almost going to be like the SEC and the Big 10 potentially are just above everyone else in college football, and these conferences are not going to have a lot of parity. But this is what it looks like. So they will join in 2024. There will be no divisions, and I can't say that any of this has been 100% confirmed, but this is what's out there. I believe it to be true from sources online. So again, I feel very confident that this is how it's going to go down. Can't say it with 100% confidence, but I do believe this is what it will be. 9 conference games. It'll be a 6-3 schedule format, which means you get 3 locked rivals and you'll have 6 rotating games, which is just perfect because that means you're going to play every team at least every other year. So you'll have your 3 teams, and then you'll play the other 6, and then you'll play the other 6 the next year. So those 6 teams will go back and forth. I think it's perfect. It means that, again, if you're there at a school 4 years, you're going to it's guaranteed that you will see every team at your home stadium, and you're going to see every team at least twice in those 4 years. So this is the ideal formula, in my opinion. I really like it. I'm going to go through what I think they could do with this schedule here in just a second. Now, keep in mind, there is no way to do this perfectly. There is no way to make everyone happy. There's no way to keep every rivalry. But what I did is I kept the big rivalries. So we're talking, the Iron Bowl, Auburn, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, the Egg Bowl, Texas, Oklahoma. Kept the big rivalries, Georgia, Florida. But I did not worry about all these. I mean, they're rivalries, sure, but I did not worry about keeping Mississippi State and Kentucky. I didn't worry about keeping Texas A&M and Arkansas. These are rivalries that have kind of been just put together in recent years in the SEC. And there are some rivalries that we're just not going to get. I'll go ahead and give you a spoiler right here, because I think this is going to be one of the biggest disappointments for a lot of people. I don't have Alabama playing LSU every year. Yes, that has become a rivalry, but it's really become a big rivalry just because of the success of the two teams, not necessarily because they go way back 100 years or anything like that. And I think you have to look at the long history of these rivalries. You also have to balance the schedules to a certain extent. If Alabama played Auburn, Tennessee, and LSU, that's potentially a brutal 3 games that you have to playing those 3 teams every year. Not right now, maybe not, but if Auburn gets back to being a top 15 program and LSU stays a top 10 program, and Tennessee, they kind of stay like a top 10 program, that's going to be a really tough schedule. So there are a lot of different factors that go into this. So what I did, because I did several different formulas, I did several different schedules, and again, they're good and bad with everything you do. You're not going, like I said, you're not going to make everyone happy. You're not going to keep every rivalry, because in the SEC, really a lot of these teams have more than 3 rivals. If you look at, let's just take Auburn, for example. They have a rivalry with Alabama, obviously. They have a rivalry with Georgia. You could say LSU is a rivalry, and you're not going to be able to keep all 3 of those games, because then, LSU, they might have 3 rivals outside of Auburn, and Georgia might, well, we're going to keep Georgia and Auburn, but let's just get into it. Let's just show you what it looks like. And so what I did, back to what I was getting to here, what I did is I kept the big rivalries, and then I just went with geography for the rest of the games. Kept the big rivals, didn't worry about Texas A&M and South Carolina. That rivalry makes no sense. That should not be played. And yes, we're going to lose some big games, but if you do that, you keep the big rivalries, and then you just go with geography, which is a formula that they might do. This is what it would look like. Again, I'm not saying this is what it's going to be. I don't really think this is what it's going to be, because I think you have to also look at balancing the schedules, and I don't know how it's going to come out, but this is what it would look like if you kept the big rivalries and then you just went with geography for the rest of the games. So Alabama would play Auburn, Mississippi State, and Tennessee. And again, Alabama, LSU, I know fans are going to be wanting to see that game, but you're not going to get rid of Auburn or Tennessee. And Mississippi State's only like an hour away from Alabama, and that is, it's not a rivalry in the sense that the games, Mississippi State hadn't beaten Alabama in a long, long time, but they played for a long time, and they're close to each other. So it's kind of like a rivalry. And so I think they will keep Mississippi State in there because of geography, and also to balance the schedule. Mississippi State obviously not going to be as tough of a game as LSU every year. For Arkansas, we've got Missouri, Oklahoma, and Ole Miss. Those will be the games for them. Arkansas doesn't have a true rival. You could say LSU, they used to be rivals, but that's kind of gotten away from being a big rivalry. And again, it comes down to geography, and you go down here to LSU. If you put LSU on here, who do you take off? Maybe Ole Miss. And then who do you have? Ole Miss. This is kind of one of the ones I did before. It wound up with Ole Miss and Texas as locked rivals, which just doesn't make any sense, really. Maybe they go that route. Maybe they want to keep LSU and Arkansas, and they wind up with LSU not playing Texas, and then you have Texas and Ole Miss, and you have some games that are just kind of thrown in there because of the leftovers, and perhaps that's the way it goes. But again, if we're going by geography, this is what it will look like. Auburn will play Alabama, Florida, and Georgia. That's a pretty tough schedule if Florida gets back on top in the SEC. That's actually really tough. But they're going to play Alabama and Georgia, no doubt about that. I saw where one had them playing South Carolina instead of Florida. One of my formulas had them playing Vanderbilt instead of Florida, but they are closer to Florida, and this does make more sense, again, if you go with geography. So Alabama, Florida, and Georgia for Auburn. For Florida, they would play Auburn, Georgia, and South Carolina. I feel very confident that they play Georgia and South Carolina. Maybe they wind up working out to play LSU for that other game. You could maybe, if you could find space for them to play Tennessee, maybe it's not Auburn, but I do think they'll play Georgia and South Carolina for sure. Georgia seems pretty set. Auburn, Florida, South Carolina, I think that's a guarantee. You don't really see them going any other direction for the Bulldogs. Kentucky, I've got them playing South Carolina, Tennessee, and Vanderbilt. Tennessee and Vandy kind of rivals there with Kentucky. Tennessee and Kentucky have played, I believe I was looking it up, 118 times. I mean, they played for a long, long time. Geography-wise, South Carolina, Kentucky, pretty close there. And so they would play all teams that were in the SEC East, or currently in the SEC East. LSU would get Mississippi State, Texas, and Texas A&M. Again, I'd love to see LSU, Alabama. I'd also love to see LSU, Ole Miss. I'd love to see LSU, Arkansas. But you just can't do them all. You can't fit them all in there. And if you go with geography, Texas and Texas A&M actually make the most sense. And they've kind of put Texas A&M and LSU together as a rival already. So that one would make sense as well. But that's what they would do if they go with this formula here for LSU. Mississippi State would play Alabama, LSU, and Ole Miss. Obviously, they're going to play Ole Miss. If Bama plays LSU instead of Mississippi State, I don't know where you go with this one. Perhaps they play Vanderbilt or Kentucky or something, but I think they wind up with these three games: Bama, LSU, and Ole Miss. So let's go to the other teams now. Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas A&M. Definitely Arkansas and Oklahoma. I think A&M, perhaps that winds up being Texas or Ole Miss, or who knows. Oklahoma, I've got them playing Arkansas, Missouri, and Texas. I feel pretty confident on that one. I think that's who they'll play. Maybe you flip one out for Texas A&M just because they used to be in the Big 12. I don't know. Ole Miss, we got them playing Arkansas, Mississippi State, and Vanderbilt. For South Carolina, they'll play Florida, Georgia, and Kentucky. Again, I feel confident about Florida and Georgia. I think that's what it will be for South Carolina, but like I said, some people had Auburn in there instead of Kentucky. Tennessee, I've got them playing Alabama, Kentucky, and Vanderbilt. That'd be a really favorable schedule for Tennessee, so perhaps they don't go that route just because of just trying to balance these schedules. But those are their three biggest rivals if you look back through the history of college football. I know Tennessee, Florida, Tennessee, Georgia, those games have been so much bigger in recent years, but if you're going to go historically, if you're going to go with geography, Kentucky and Vandy would be those teams for Tennessee. They're the teams they play at the end of the year, every year pretty much. Texas, we got them playing LSU, Oklahoma, and Texas A&M. Definitely Oklahoma, definitely Texas A&M. Maybe it's not LSU, maybe it's Arkansas or someone else, but this, again, did make the most sense. Texas A&M playing LSU, Missouri, and Texas. I feel pretty confident on that one. And then we got Vanderbilt playing Kentucky, Ole Miss, and Tennessee. So that's what it will look like if they keep the biggest rivalries, like I said, and then they go with geography for the rest of the games. They may not go this way. They may try to balance these schedules a little bit more so that one team doesn't have a much easier schedule or one team doesn't have a much harder schedule. But if they go with that formula, I do believe this is what the schedule will look like once Oklahoma and Texas join the SEC in 2024. Your thoughts, your feedback, what would you change? Again, I'm not saying this is the perfect schedule. I'm not saying it's a schedule that I would necessarily go with. This is just a schedule that they would use if they go with geography and only worrying about those big rivalries. Again, give me your thoughts down below. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more here on the SG1 Sports College Football Channel.